Joining me now, former Europe, Africa, and Middle East editor at the Associated Press, Dan Perry. Dan, welcome back. As always, appreciate your perspective. We've got a number of things happening right now, but at the forefront is the attacks are happening. What options does Israel have, not just to fend off Hamas and continue those talks, but the now rocket attacks from Hezbollah?
Well, the rocket attacks from Hezbollah appear to have been a bit of a fizzle, and it looks like Hezbollah was smart enough to declare victory anyway and stand down. Now, if that holds, which it might not, but if it holds, and if Iran continues to put off their threat and retaliation, then it sort of looks like the U.S. intervention bringing over pretty massive military mobilization and making extraordinary public threats against Iran, specifically of cataclysmic consequences, might have worked. And it looks like, indeed, neither of those sides appears to want a really huge regional war. As for Israel's options, Israel has the option of agreeing to Hamas's terms of ending the war and pulling out of Gaza and sufficing with the damage it has done to Hamas hitherto in return for the hostages. I don't see Hamas backing away from what has been that fundamental bedrock position of theirs since early on in the war. Netanyahu refuses to do that, insisting now that Israel stay in particular in the strip of land, which is the Gaza-Egypt border. There's a lot of arguments for and against that demand. It does make sense, but basically, in Israel, the sense is that if they stick to those demands and Hamas doesn't give in, which I have no evidence that they will, then this could involve the sacrificing of the hostages. And the basic gamble, I think, that Hamas is making is that Israel cares about that, whereas it really does kind of seem like Hamas does not care about the damage to the population of Gaza should the war continue.
How many hostages are there left still in captivity in Gaza? And do we have any sense how many may still be alive?
I think the current number is 109. They think perhaps a third of them or so are already dead. This includes a number of U.S. citizens as well. And this really is the political question in Israel. To what degree to prioritize their rescue?
What else does Israel want, specifically as it pertains to the borders with Egypt to the south?
Well, Israel wants to be along the border in order to prevent smuggling by Hamas of weapons from Egypt, which is a bit of a lawless area in the Sinai Peninsula, into Gaza. That had been the source of much of Hamas's ability to arm itself in the years preceding. All of this becomes a little bit moot if Israel succeeds in removing Hamas from power in Gaza and rendering their fighting force no longer existent. I suppose it's a concession that they have basically failed to do that totally. To a degree, that's because of Israel's own insistence on not working with the U.S. and organizing a day-after plan and an alternative government in Gaza, which attaches to Israel's own internal political shenanigans. As for the other border with Hezbollah, the U.S. is very eager to not have an escalation in a regional war, not just because they're such humanitarians, but because of the election and the entire war in the Middle East being a wedge issue for the Democrats, where they go one way, they lose the Muslims in Michigan, they go the other way, maybe they endanger Pennsylvania because of the Jews. They want the war over. Israel has a whole different perspective. They have a not unreasonable desire to get Hezbollah, which is the world's largest non-state military force, off their border in the north. Imagine, if you would, the world's largest non-state military force taking orders from Iran, being right across from the U.S. Niagara Falls, firing at New York State for 11 months. That's where Israel is. And they may at some point feel that the Iranians and Hezbollah have pushed the envelope too far, at which point they will probably move into Lebanon with ground force.
Yeah, dueling priorities and the threat of a wider conflict. Dan, always thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Martin.